Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Wanted to make this video as a follow-up to my analysis on Trump's CPAC speech, just to go over a little bit on the straw poll results that they took immediately preceding that speech. So, to start off, as we all know, Trump lost the election to Joe Biden back in November, losing by about 7 million votes and 4.5%. However, that did not deter people from wanting to renominate him and vote for him in 2024. Obviously, not too surprising since we were relatively familiar with the GOP base at this moment. But there's already different spins that you can take on this. So, one thing I'll say is that you can take like the Washington Times position on it. Trump beats out 20 others in Washington Times CPAC straw poll. That is the headline, that is the essence. However, when you take a little bit of a closer look, like perhaps the New York Times title, Trump did win the CPAC poll, but, quote, only 68% want him to run again. Now, it's interesting because, the CPAC has varying track records, varying results on how reliable it has been in terms of forecasting the party nominee. So, when we look at, historic winners, we have people like Ronald Reagan winning back in 76. Gerald Ford was the one that got eventually nominated. Obviously, Reagan ran in 1980. He won the straw poll, was eventually the nominee. Jack Kemp obviously did not become the nominee back in 1988. It was George H.W. Bush. Same thing in 92, George H.W. Bush was renominated again, but Pat Buchanan won. Same thing, in all of these straw polls, Bob Dole was the eventual nominee and they got it right in 96. However, they were wrong. Same up until then. Same thing in the 2000 election cycle. Wasn't until 2000 that they got it right. 2001, 2004, they didn't have it. But then, in the 2005 to 2008 cycle before the 08 race, they got it wrong every single time. They did choose Mitt Romney, and then Mitt Romney in 2012, which was right. But again, right before Mitt Romney's election in 2010 and 2011, they got it wrong. Same thing with Donald Trump being nominated. 2013, you had Rand Paul. 2014, Rand Paul. 2015, Rand Paul. And 2016, Ted Cruz. But we can obviously ask Ted Cruz, and for that matter, all the runner-ups here, how exactly 2016 went for them. So, now we get to, Trump and how he might have done. And, I think it's a little bit telling to see just quickly before we delve into the results themselves, how Trump was doing as president. When he left office, this was one of his, basically at his worst point, with the exception being perhaps a week to 2 weeks before that, because, well, that was when the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol, riot, domestic terror attack, however you want to describe it, occurred by Trump supporters, which caused his approval ratings, which had been pretty bad, at the time of the election, roughly 7 points underwater. That only went down as January 6th approached, and then obviously fell out to being about, 15 points underwater by the time he left office. But, now we don't really have job approval ratings. We have to go off of favorability ratings, which aren't being taken as much. And, it's tough to, favorability and job approval is not the same. A lot of people didn't like Trump, but maybe approved of his policies, at least marginally speaking. So, we have this to go off now, which has a unfavorable rating of, underwater by 19 points. We bring it back to the day he left. I can't quite get the cursor to go right on January 20th, but, we're looking at like 19.7 points, about 4.7 points worse. So maybe you do a slight adjustment upwards to get like a true, quote unquote, true job approval rating. But this is what we got to work off with. He's 19 points underwater, very unpopular, and has not yet seemed to quite enjoy that rebound that many presidents get after they leave office. So we'll have to see how that goes. And then, looking here, the most recent poll had him at 37 to 60. I'm going to pick the Economist YouGov poll here to go off of, just because it's a little bit more middle of the road, down 15 points, which maybe overstates his approval or favorability, but it's a little bit more of a middle watermark than the Political morning result. And when you look at that, you see among adults here, he has a 39-point approval rating to 57 disapproving, or favorability rating. Then when you go down to our registered voters, it gets a little bit better at 42 to 57, but still not that great. However, within the Republican Party, he is still, very favorable. With 67% saying very favorable, somewhat favorable at 20%, 6% somewhat unfavorable, 6% very unfavorable, for a total 87 to 12 point or 75-point margin, which is great for Trump, considering that, everything that he did during the course of his presidency, the Capitol riots and whatnot. So, that brings us to the CPAC poll. They had a few different interesting polling nuggets, which I thought were, pretty interesting to take a look at. But, when we look at them here, starting off with the most important issues, it's pretty clear that election integrity is at the forefront of that list. Followed by constitutional rights, immigration, border wall, reopening the economy. Interestingly, but maybe not surprisingly to all of us, COVID and public health is not on that list. But I guess that is unfortunately where the base of the GOP, and in particular, I should note, the CPAC crowd, which is particularly the most, if you want to call it pro-Trump, hardest liner conservatives out there. They were at the conference, so obviously we have to take that into account when we look at these results. So next, I want to talk about this right here. I mean, it's really interesting. You take a look at this, and when they ask the question about whether Donald Trump is like the right vision for the party, overwhelmingly 95% to 3% say yes, go Trump's way, 92-point margin. And then, when we take a look at the job that Trump did as president, 97% approve, 3% disapprove. So clearly you can tell where that crowd is at. However, this is where there's some really interesting nuances in the poll that I think really we should all be taking a deep look at, because you would expect that the number of people who would vote for him based on these approval numbers and based on the crowd at CPAC, which are the most devoted fans of Donald Trump, I would say, you would expect them to want him to, in roughly these same types of numbers, by these same types of margins, want to run again and would vote for him if he ran in the 2024 Republican primary. However, that's not quite the case. We see 68% of them wanting him to run, followed by 15% saying no, for a 53-point margin there, 17% unsure. So, even if you reallocate that 17% and say, let's say this number goes to like 75-25, honestly, that is, especially considering that CPAC is not the entire Republican Party, and that there are, independent-minded and independent registered people who vote in the Republican Party, who may see Trump differently. That's not as high of a number I would expect to see. And then when you're given an option of candidates, right, we see this number go down even further, only 55%, which is obviously more than enough to win. Trump did not win a majority of the vote back in 2016, and he still got the nomination. However, it is telling, in my opinion, that, it seems like even people at CPAC are kind of ready for someone else to carry the baton, even if it is someone that is a Trumpian type figure like Ron DeSantis and Kristi Noem, who were the next two highest vote getters. with apparently based on the McLaughlin Associates. These slides are taken right from the video stream from CPAC, and which so this poll is sponsored by CPAC, McLaughlin and Associates, Trump's pollster, or one of Trump's pollsters at least, and the American Conservative Union, or that put on CPAC. So the remaining 3% on that other category are Trump aligned figures apparently. So we can see, I guess, ideologically where the loyalty slide, but I mean, one of the maybe other interesting takeaways is look at Mike Pence. Like Mike Pence, say what you want to say about the guy, but he showed pretty much unequivocating loyalty to Trump throughout his 4 years in office, and to see him get 1% of this straw poll shows you, I guess, how personally the people there took Pence not wanting to try to overturn the results of the election, which he had no capacity to do anyways, back on January 6th. And anyways, just to close out, there was this poll done on people on their thoughts about if Trump was not running, who would they vote for? And Ron DeSantis was a pretty clear winner by a wide margin, winning a 43% plurality there. With other Trumpian type figures like Kristi Noem, Trump Jr., Mike Pompeo, Ted Cruz, Tucker Carlson, you can read the list, carrying the vast majority of the share of votes. I mean, taking a look at that, the slightly less Trumpian type figures like Marco Rubio, Mitt Romney, John Kasich, Larry Hogan, Chris Christie, Charlie Baker, etc. I mean, all in all, it looks like they're getting a total of roughly 3% of the vote or less. So, you can clearly see that at least among the CPAC crowd, strong approval for Trump, strong desire to see him lead the party, and if not him lead the party, someone in his image lead the party. But I do think it is super important just to keep in mind this figure of 68% and this number of 55%, because really it's not as strong, considering that you saw gold statues or painted gold statues of Trump and perpetuations of the voter fraud myth. It's very surprising to me. I expected to see this number be like 80% Trump when given an option, or more for that matter. So it's really interesting to see, and honestly, I do think it paves a lane out there, albeit very narrow, for a not just someone new running, but a anti-Trump type vote that coming from someone like Ben Sass or Larry Hogan type figures, taking that lane and trying to win in the primary. Again, right now Trump runs in the primary. I think he is by far the favorite, but this poll does, I think, give some hope that there is a certain level of fracturing within the ultra hardline faction behind Trump towards maybe them wanting to see someone new run as opposed to the old. So anyways, I'll leave it at that. Hope you guys found this interesting. I really appreciate you guys watching. This was my first time trying to use different sources, so I hope that this was a decent viewing experience for you guys. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys for watching. Hope everyone had an amazing weekend, and yeah, enjoy the upcoming week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a good one. Bye.